Hey guys, tonight we dive into the not-so-glorious reality of medieval journeys. Forget knights or shiny carriages. This is about where an ordinary, slightly muddy villager might end up sleeping if they dared to wander past their home fields. So, lower the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that gentle hum, the modern stand-in for animals snoring nearby, and let's step together into tonight's tale. Asterisk, the journey begins. Close your eyes, dim the lights, and imagine the morning mist curling around your village. You are a medieval peasant, your feet bare against the cold, uneven earth. Today is not like any other day. Today, you leave home, not for pleasure, not for glory, but because duty or misfortune has summoned you to travel. And as we step together into the muddy roads, prepare yourself. This is no gentle stroll. This is the long, awkward, sometimes humiliating journey of a poor peasant in medieval Europe, stepping out of the village. You stand at the edge of your village, clutching a sack that is more hope than substance. Inside, a crust of bread, a ragsome cloak, and a stick that serves both as walking aid and tentative defense against random geese or worse. Behind you, your family gathers, your grandmother, who seems ancient even to your eyes, your younger siblings, who have already begun tugging at your bread, and your cousin, who offers a wry grin that says, "You'll regret leaving." The ground beneath your feet is soft and wet, mud sucking at your toes with each step. The smell of the village, from chimneys, dung from livestock, and a faint undertone of unwashed wool clings to you, as if to remind you of home. But home is behind you now, and the road stretches ahead, a narrow ribbon of dirt, riddled with stones, animal droppings, and the occasional broken cartwheel. You take your first step and instantly regret not wearing shoes, or socks, or something resembling protection. Your feet slip slightly in the mud, and you curse the cobbler who sold you that one-size-fits-all peasant sandal last spring. But there is no turning back. A peasant cannot simply retreat from the road, lest the village gossip declare you a coward. So you trudge onward, stick in hand, heart pounding, and blisters beginning their silent, relentless work. The minor horrors along the road of a short journey becomes an ordeal. A herd of sheep crosses ahead, their shepherd nowhere in sight. You dodge hooves and tiny hooves, praying that none of the animals is in a particularly foul mood. Then comes the smell, wet wool, cow dung, and a hint of something that might have once been a goat. You inhale deeply. There is no escape. The road, it seems, is an assault on every sense. Bandits, too, are a constant, if mostly imaginary, companion. Every rustle in the bushes, every distant shout, sends your pulse racing. Wolves are rumored to stalk the edges of the forest. Some say they can smell desperation, others that they're simply lazy and prefer deer. Either way, your imagination is busy, and it does not rest. Each shadow could be a wolf, a bandit, or the ghost of a peasant who dared leave home barefoot. You tighten your grip on the stick. Even your neighbors, who you thought had only warm smiles and gossip to offer, might turn into threats if they catch you wandering near their fields. A peasant trespassing is not just rude, it is an invitation for a pitchfork lesson in humility. You walk carefully, eyes scanning, mind alert, heart unsure whether to beat with fear or exhaustion. Blessings and superstitions before leaving. You paused to visit the village priest. He is a small, wiry man, with a voice that could shatter glass or lull it to sleep. He gives you a blessing, muttering incantations meant to protect you from wolves, demons, bandits, and suspiciously aggressive chickens. He hands you half a turnip and a gaze heavy with concern. "Travel safely," he says, and you nod solemnly, though you secretly wonder whether the turnip is more useful than the blessing. You tuck the turnip into your sack alongside the bread, a talisman against both hunger and existential dread. Perhaps it will sustain you. Perhaps it will remind you of home. Perhaps it will be devoured by a mouse within the hour. Either way, it is now your companion, along with the mud, the blisters, and the road that stretches far beyond the horizon. Farewells. The village sees you off with a ceremony of sorts, as much ritual as warning. Your grandmother waves solemnly, her eyes narrow slits of worry. "Don't get eaten," she mutters, a phrase you know is both literal and metaphorical. Your cousin smirks, patting your shoulder, and says, "Bring back something edible, or don't bother returning at all." Your siblings tug at the bread once more. You snatch it back, muttering about fairness, and march onward. The village recedes behind you. Familiar smells fade. The comforting clamor of daily life, children screaming, animals squealing. The baker, Cursing his oven is replaced by the road, long, uncertain, and filled with possibilities that are mostly terrifying. Sensory overload by now. Your senses are overwhelmed. Mud squelches beneath your feet. A stray cow snorts as you pass a field, eyes following you with suspicion. Birds caw overhead. Somewhere perhaps, a dog barks, and you flinch. The wind carries scents of distant villages, smoke, cooking fires, and that faint, unmistakable odor of manure. You pause for a moment, leaning on your stick, trying to catch your breath. Every movement reminds you of the blisters growing on your feet. The sun, if it dares to peek through the clouds, is harsh on your bare shoulders. Your cloak, damp from earlier rain, chafes against skin that has not known comfort in weeks. Travel, you realize, is not merely difficult. It is an all-consuming challenge of body, mind, and spirit. Small interactions along the way. The first village on the road is not a stop, but a chance encounter. A farmer waves from a distance, suspicious but curious. You bow politely, muttering greetings in the dialect of the land, hoping he cannot see how exhausted and muddy you are. Perhaps he is alone. Perhaps he is armed. Perhaps he will offer a kind smile, or a rude word. You pass children playing near a cart. One of them hurls a clod of mud in your direction. You flinch, wipe it off your cheek, and mutter an apology. To the universe, nothing matters more in these first steps than survival, invisibility, and the fragile hope that the road ahead might contain a barn, a friendly priest, or at least a patch of dry grass. The reality sets in. Hours pass. Every mile is measured by pain in your feet, the weariness of your shoulders, and the ever-present thought, where will I sleep tonight? The barn in the distance is just a silhouette. The church spire offers no guarantee, and yet you march on, because that is all a medieval peasant can do. You think of bread, of warm fires, of soft hay. You think of the monk's blessing, the turnip, the stick. Every small token is now a treasure. The journey is long. The road is muddy. Your feet are blistered. And somewhere, deep in the folds of your rags, you clutch the hope that the night will bring something less terrible than the mud, the wind, or the wolves imagined in every shadow. As the sun dips lower, painting the road in muted gold, you realize the truth every peasant knows. The hardest part of the day is just beginning. You've walked for hours, each step a battle against mud, blisters, and the creeping suspicion that your feet are now more mud than flesh. And yet, the pressing question looms larger than your exhaustion. Where will you sleep tonight? Barns. The first refuge, the first barn you spot, is humble. Its thatched roof sagging slightly under the weight of the afternoon rain. From the outside, it seems like a sanctuary. A peasant approaching a barn is like a moth drawn to a flickering candle. Inside lies warmth, shelter, and straw knot, luxurious, but infinitely preferable to the mud and cold that have accompanied you all day. But there is etiquette. A peasant cannot simply wander in. You knock on the door, hoping the farmer is sober and not armed with a broom or pitchfork. Moments pass. A shadow moves inside. A grunt, and then a cautious, who goes there? You explain, humbly, that you are a traveler, a poor soul in need of a night's rest. Perhaps the farmer sighs, perhaps he grunts approval, or perhaps he waves you off. Luck is a fickle companion. Tonight, fortunately, fortune favors you. The barn door creaks open, and you step inside. Sensory reality of barn life, inside the air, is thick with hay and the unmistakable musk of livestock. A cow shifts in the corner, watching you with what you swear is judgment in its eyes. Chickens scuttle past, occasionally pecking at the straw. Somewhere, a rat scurries, performing a miniature inspection of the barn's human visitor. You find a patch of straw to lay your cloak, curling yourself into a position somewhere between fetal and defensive. The straw is scratchy, uneven, and punctuated by the occasional hidden twig. Yet, it is still preferable to the cold, wet road. You breathe in the layered scents, fresh hay, cow musk, faint manure. Somehow, it feels oddly comforting, a chaotic symphony of smells that say, you are alive, you are indoors, you will survive tonight. Fields open air, options if the barn had been full, or the farmer unfriendly. Your next option would be the fields. The wide open countryside offers space, but no protection. A patch of grass seems inviting, but closer inspection reveals thistles, uneven terrain. And if fortune is cruel, cow dung. Curling into a ball, you press your cloak to the ground. The breeze stirs, carrying distant sounds, sheep bleating, the occasional crow, and, somewhere far off, the low growl of a dog patrolling its master's land. Sleep here is a careful negotiation between comfort and caution. One wrong move could leave you wet, cold, or otherwise humiliated. Yet, the fields have their charms. At night, the stars are free to gaze upon you, uninterrupted by walls or ceilings. The breeze cools the damp sweat from your journey, and for brief moments, you almost forget the aches of your body. Almost forests, quiet but suspicious forests, offer shade, shelter, and the illusion of privacy. But they are quiet in a way that unsettles. Every twig snap is amplified, each owl hoot a whispered warning. You might imagine a wolf lurking behind a tree, or a bandit, or perhaps just a rabbit, but your imagination refuses to differentiate. Settling under a copse of trees, you huddle against the rough bark, praying that the wind does not shift the branches to create ghostly silhouettes. The forest floor is littered with sticks and leaves that poke and prod at your skin. You roll onto your side, accepting that discomfort is now a permanent companion. Sleep comes, fitful and shallow, broken by the occasional imagined predator, or the cold that seeps through your cloak. The emotional weight of the road by now. The physical exhaustion has merged with the emotional loneliness presses down, and each step seems longer than the last. You recall the priest's blessing, the bread tugged by your siblings, the warning from your grandmother. Survival is not merely about finding shelter. It is about navigating a world where every encounter carries potential danger or kindness, or sometimes both simultaneously. Every decision, the choice of barn, field, or foresties, a gamble. Every shadow could hide threat or safety, and every passing hour pushes you closer to your first night on the road, where sleep is both necessity and peril. The first night approaches as twilight deepens. The world takes on a muted palette. The mud glows darkly in the last rays of sunlight. The animals settle, some snorting, others sighing. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls out, echoing your own weariness. You settle into the barn straw, the field grass, or the forest floor, and feel the full weight of the journey. Your body aches, your stomach rumbles with hunger, and your feet are blistered, raw from hours of relentless walking. But here, in the twilight, there is a moment of fragile peace. The road behind you is long and unforgiving, but you have survived. It's so far, and tonight, somewhere beneath a roof, a tree, or the open sky, you will rest. Even if that rest is interrupted by a cow shifting, a rat inspecting your cloak, or a branch falling from above, it is still a night you will remember. Because in the life of a medieval peasant, every night survived is a victory against a world that is cold, muddy, and absurdly cruel. So here, dear listener, we pause. The peasant's first day on the road is ending, and the night looms, bringing both danger and strange comfort. The barn, the field, the forest, each a testament to resilience and ingenuity. And though tomorrow will bring new challenges, churchyards, monasteries, taverns, and perhaps worse, the first night's struggle reminds us, survival is an art. Humor is a shield. And even in the muddiest, blister-filled, cow-scented moments, life goes on. First options for sleeping: close your eyes and imagine the world as a medieval peasant does at dusk. The road behind you long, your feet blistered, your stomach rumbling, and the sun dipping low behind the hills. You have walked for hours, and now the pressing question settles into your bones. Where will you sleep tonight? Every option carries risk, discomfort, or both. Tonight, we explore the first choices available to the weary, poor traveler: barns, fields, and forests. Barns, the first refuge. The barn appears ahead like a beacon in a dull, muddy landscape. Its thatched roof sags slightly, hinting at age and long winters, yet promising the one thing a peasant craves after a day of trudging through mud and wind: shelter. Inside, the air is thick with hay, the faint tang of livestock, and a whiff of something unidentifiable but definitely alive. You step cautiously, stick in hand, and your imagination immediately conjures judgmental eyes on every corner. A cow shifts lazily, sending a faint plume of hay dust into the air. Chickens scuttle past, kicking straw in your direction. Somewhere, a rat performs a reconnaissance mission on your cloak, as if to assess your worthiness as a barnmate. Here, the barn presents both boon and burden. The pros are clear: warmth, animals radiate heat, Curling beside a docile ox may raise your body temperature above the freezing outdoors. Straw bedding, not luxurious, but infinitely preferable to mud or frozen grass. Shelter, roof overhead, walls, protecting you from wind, rain, and prying eyes. But the cons are equally vivid. Animals, cows, horses, pigs, and occasionally goats, are unpredictable roommates. One misplaced shift could flatten your torso or crush your pride. Smell, a symphony of hay, dung, sweat, and animal musk assaults your nostrils. You inhale deeply, wincing, but it is still preferable to the open wind. Risk, farmers may return unexpectedly, carrying pitchforks or curses, especially if you've disturbed their livestock's evening routines. The judgmental cow, imagine lying down on the straw, stretching your aching legs. The cow beside you watches intently, slowly chewing cud. Its gaze is unwavering, almost accusatory, as if it knows you are a trespasser, a stranger, a poor soul daring to rest in its domain. You whisper apologies to the bovine, imagining a world in which cows could deliver lectures on morality. The chickens provide background commentary, rustling noisily, and the vetiver vigilant performs a nightly inspection, circling your head like a tiny flea circus. The smells, the sounds, the movement, they all combine into a chaotic sensory experience. Sleep here is not peaceful. It is survival, wrapped in humor, discomfort, and the faint hope that the cow does not decide to lie down suddenly. Barn humor, exaggerated sensory experience. The barn, while functional, is a theater of comedy if one listens closely. The cow lets out a long, contemplative sigh. You flinch. Is it judgment or just digestion? Hard to tell. A chicken pecks at your cloak, as if critiquing your choice of bedding. Somewhere, a rat taps your foot lightly, an inspector in miniature bee for retreating into the shadows. You realize that for all its warmth and protection, a barn is a place where your dignity is tested. But in the hierarchy of peasant survival, it ranks high. It is better than mud, better than wind, and far better than the imagined jaws of nocturnal predators. Fields, open air, sleeping. If the barn door had remained closed, or the farmer's mood sour, your next option is the open field. Here, freedom is paired with vulnerability. The ground may be uneven, littered with thistles or hidden stones. Cow dung is frequent and unavoidable. Wind sweeps across the plains, sometimes gentle, sometimes biting, chilling skin already sensitive from the day's march. Yet fields hold subtle advantages. Space you can stretch without fear of bumping elbows with livestock. Sky above, the stars are visible. A free spectacle, unlike the cramped barn interior. Quiet, except for occasional nocturnal wildlife. The air carries no gossiping chickens or judgmental cows. Field humor, nature's obstacles. The field, however, is not without its comic misery. You attempt to find a soft patch, only to land on a clump of thistles. A yelp escapes you, muffled by the evening air. The mud underfoot seems alive, clinging to boots and toes, refusing to let go. A nearby cow might wander too close, sniffing your blanket with curiosity or suspicion. Even here, survival requires ingenuity. You might use your cloak as padding, tuck against a small hillock to break the wind, or simply pray that the field remains unclaimed by other wandering peasants or nocturnal predators. Forests quiet, suspicious, and full of paranoia. The forest offers a third option. Quiet, shaded, and potentially protective. Trees create a sense of enclosure, shielding you from wind and casual eyes. But the same canopy that protects also conceals dangers. Wolves, foxes, and other predators are rumored to roam here. Branches creak and snap, amplifying every movement into a potential threat. Shadows transform twigs and rocks into menacing shapes, testing your nerves. Sleep in the forest is a delicate negotiation. You must balance warmth against exposure, camouflage against comfort, and imagination against reality. Every owl hoot feels like a judgment, every rustle a warning. And yet, if one masters the forest, it can offer solitude and a night of tentative peace, far from judgmental cows or rat inspections. Forest humor, paranoia meets reality. Imagine lying beneath the trees, your cloak wrapped tightly, eyes half closed. You hear a twig snap, bandit or rabbit, an owl hoot, advisory or insult, leaves brushing nearby, friendly or foe. You shiver, not just from cold, but from the absurd paranoia that has become your companion. Every rustle is a story, every shadow a character, each imagined predator, a villain in the theater of the medieval night. Yet, despite the tension, the forest holds its charm. No smell of dung, no judgmental animals, just the wind, the stars, and the faint hope of a night survived. As night deepens, the road behind you fades into shadow, and the first hints of moonlight stretch across the fields and forests. The peasant traveler has now learned that the world outside the village is equal parts absurd, cruel, and strangely comedic. Wherever you lie tonight, you will become intimately acquainted with discomfort, danger, and the odd charm of medieval improvisation. Fields revisited. Open air challenges you return to the idea of the fields. Open, spacious, and free. They also demand creativity. You scan for a soft patch, avoiding cow dung, hidden stones, and clumps of thorny plants that threaten your thin cloak. Improvised bedding. Your cloak or sack becomes a mattress substitute. Folded multiple times, it offers slightly more insulation, but the ground remains stubbornly cold and damp. Wind considerations, a hillock or slight depression can provide a small windbreak. Otherwise, gusts press relentlessly against your body, testing your endurance. Predator, paranoia. Even a rabbit hopping nearby can trigger exaggerated fear. Thanks to hours of exhaustion and the imagination running wild, humor and sensory experience. In the fields, the field is a theater of accidental comedy and discomfort. A stray cow wanders close, sniffing suspiciously. You roll slightly, hoping it doesn't decide to graze on your cloak or you. Mud clings like a jealous companion, tugging at your boots and trousers with each movement. Thistles puncture exposed skin, tiny reminders that nature does not negotiate with weary travelers. Despite these challenges, the field offers freedom. The stars are visible, sparkling like promises of safety, if only your imagination dares to trust them. Sleep here is shallow but possible. You close your eyes, listening to the wind through grass, imagining each rustle is either a friend or an entirely avoidable disaster. Forests, the theater of paranoia. Next, the forest demands your attention. Trees tower over you, their branches casting shadows that transform twigs, rocks, and low shrubs into imagined monsters. Safety in numbers, sort of. You may find a copse with thick underbrush to shield yourself. The darkness offers cover but also conceals unknown creatures. Wildlife, wolves, foxes, and owls all contribute to the eerie ambience. Every rustle may be friend or foe. Mental vigilance. Your mind creates a nightly narrative, turning every sound into a potential story of doom or comedy. Forest, humor, and sensory immersion. The forest. Absurdity meets reality. A twig snaps. You hold your breath. It is just a squirrel, but your imagination awards it the role of a predatory bandit. An owl hoots ominously. You swear it is judging your life decisions. Leaves rustle, sending phantom shadows across your cloak, creating a miniature horror show in real time. Sleep here is an exercise in compromise. You curl tightly, wrapping your cloak like a shroud, whispering minor prayers to saints you've never heard of. Your body aches from hours of walking. Your stomach complains. But the forest offers shelter in its own precarious way, unseen, quiet, and only marginally less judgmental than a cow. The flea circus and animal guests, whether barn, field, or forest. One universal truth emerges. Medieval travel is filled with unexpected roommates. Fleas, small insects, and the occasional curious rat provide a constant background of subtle discomfort. Barn, fleas. These tiny creatures perform a relentless circus on your skin, invisible, yet impossible to ignore. Forest, insects, mosquitoes, beetles, and spiders patrol the underbrush, often inspecting your cloak for weak spots. Animal interactions. From cows brushing against your back to chickens pecking at stray threads, the world becomes a living, breathing sensory overload. This is survival comedy. Small, sharp, absurd details reminding the wary traveler that life on the road is never dull, even when it is miserable. Nighttime survival strategies. The astute peasant learns quickly. Comfort is not guaranteed, but survival can be maximized with clever improvisation. Positioning. Choose higher ground in fields to avoid pooled water. In forests, seek dense underbrush to shield from wind and visibility. Layering. Multiple cloaks, sacks, or folded rags provide insulation against cold, mud, and insects. Awareness. Even when attempting sleep, maintain partial vigilance. forests, and fields are unpredictable. Animals, bandits, or neighbors might intrude. Humor as defense, imagining judgmental cows, flea circuses, or sarcastic owls, transforms discomfort into an entertaining mental exercise, preserving sanity in extreme conditions. Transition to structured sleeping options. By now, the first night is well underway. The peasant has endured barns, fields, and forests absorbing smells, sounds, and physical discomfort at every step. But the journey has just begun. Beyond these improvised options lie more structured medieval accommodations, churchyards, monasteries, taverns, and shrines. These locations bring new considerations, spiritual judgment, social expectations, and the occasional, unexpected kindness. But before those options arrive, the first night teaches essential lessons. Adaptation is survival. Humor is vital. Every uncomfortable patch of straw, field, or forest is a story, a memory, a lesson in resilience. So, weary traveler, as you lie, curled in straw, on grass, or beneath whispering trees, remember this: the night is long, the journey uncertain, and yet every challenge survived becomes a badge of honor. The barn smelled, the field was muddy, and the forest whispered threats. But through it all, your imagination and, perhaps, a faint sense of humor remains intact. Sleep is not perfect. It is survival, it is adventure, and it is undeniably medieval. Religious and semi-sanctified options. Imagine, if you will, the weary medieval traveler at nightfall. Your feet are blistered, your cloak damp, and the open road behind you stretches like a line of endless despair. The fields were cold, the forest unnerving, the barn smelled like a cow had judged your entire life. Now, a faint glow appears ahead. Stone church, its yard dotted with gravestones, and the occasional flicker of candlelight. Tonight, your options are no longer purely improvised. They are blessed. Welcome to the slightly safer, semi-sanctified world of medieval sleep. Churchyards, monasteries, and roadside shrines. Churchyards sleep among the holy. The churchyard looms, its iron gates creaking faintly in the wind. Gravestones, moss-covered and leaning at odd angles, punctuate the ground like silent sentinels. Here, the poor traveler hopes for two things: safety from human predators, and a sliver of spiritual protection. Pros: spiritual safety. Sleeping near the dead, or on consecrated ground, was thought to ward off bandits and ill spirits. Public visibility. Villagers rarely disturbed someone resting on hallowed ground, wary of divine consequence. Dry patches, stone paths, and mounded earth occasionally provide slightly elevated, drier surfaces than open fields. Cons: clergy intervention. Monks, priests, or nuns might discover you and gently or not so gently escort you elsewhere. Minimal comfort. Gravestones are hard, moss is damp, and soil cold. You quickly learn that holiness does not soften your spine. Unexpected neighbors. Other desperate travelers may also claim the yard, producing smells, snoring, or lullaby, arguing over the best gravestone. The churchyard experience. Lying among the gravestones, you feel an odd mix of reverence and discomfort. The wind rustles through trees, carrying whispers of prayers long since uttered, mingling with the occasional grunt of a fellow vagrant. Every shadow seems to stretch, forming strange, ghostly shapes. The moss smells faintly of earth and decay, but your imagination transforms it into, well, slightly less offensive decay. Here, humor creeps in. You lie against a small stone, hoping it will serve as a pillow. A nearby crow caws, its tone sounding suspiciously like a critique of your posture. You whisper apologies to the saints, confessing silently that you are not a noble, not a monk, not even particularly clean. The saints seem unimpressed, yet the advantages are undeniable. Compared to an exposed field or a barn full of judgmental livestock, the churchyard is a relative sanctuary. You are dry, semi-hidden, and under the watchful eyes of forces you hope are benevolent. Churchyard humor and sensory immersion. The grass is damp, seeping through cloaks and trousers, reminding you that earth is unconcerned with comfort. A dog wanders through the yard, sniffing gravestones, and occasionally raising its head to bark at something. Maybe a ghost, maybe a neighbor, maybe just your unfortunate luck. Fellow travelers snore in harmony, creating a medieval orchestra of discontented humans. You realize that while spiritual protection may ward off bandits and the occasional angry neighbor, it does not shield you from cold, wet, and bodily discomfort. Sleep comes in intermittent bursts, punctuated by imagination and minor curses whispered at the moon. Transition to monasteries as night deepens. The churchyard's virtues become apparent, but the limitations remain. Gravestones do not provide warmth, nor do they serve soup or offer a roof above your head. For slightly greater comfort, the peasant traveler dreams of the monastery. That stone sanctuary, promising not just shelter, but a thin layer of order and human kindness if you behave. The promise, a floor to lie on, walls to block the wind, and perhaps a hot or at least lukewarm meal. The catch, cold stone, early waking hours, and chanting that will rattle your skull at 3 a.m. Monasteries, shelter and structure. The monastery is a step above the churchyard, a controlled environment where rules and hospitality mix in equal measure. You wait at the gate, cloak damp, shoes lost to mud, wondering whether your appearance will earn you a place to sleep or a gentle dismissal. Pros: roof and walls, protection from rain, wind, and wild animals, warmth from other humans, shared human presence reduces the chills of night. Basic food and drink, bread, watery soup, or porridge. Sustenance matters more than flavor. Order. Monks enforce a predictable rhythm, minimizing chaos. Cons: cold floors. Stone is unforgiving, and blankets are scarce. Early mornings, chanting begins at dawn or before. Shared space, fellow travelers, monks, and the occasional pest produce odors, snoring, and minor disturbances. Monastery humor and sensory details. You curl on a stone floor, imagining that the monk's chanting is a live critique of your life choices. Soup smells faintly of penance, with vegetables waving sadly from the broth. Fellow guests share space generously, though often at the cost of elbow room, personal bubble, and sanity. Despite these quirks, the monastery offers a controlled, semi-safe environment that transforms the night from chaos to tolerable structure. You rest, your mind teasing the possibility of real sleep, warmed slightly by shared humanity and proximity to warmth. As the night stretches onward, the monastery's walls and the churchyard's gravestones recede behind you, and a new form of shelter emerges. The roadside shrine, small, humble, and often forgotten by the living. These tiny structures offer the weary traveler a mix of protection, comfort, and moral reassurance. Tonight, you will discover that holiness can be surprisingly practical, even if your back remains sore and your cloak still smells faintly of mud. Roadside shrines, medieval snooze booths. Unlike monasteries, roadside shrines are not staffed, rarely maintained, and generally lack blankets, food, or mattresses. They are little more than stone or wooden shelters, sometimes containing a carved saint or relic, and positioned at crossroads, pilgrimage routes, or village outskirts. Pros: shelter from rain and wind. A slanted roof or stone overhang keeps you drier than an open field. Moral protection. Bandits, thieves, and aggressive neighbors are reluctant to interfere near holy icons. Privacy, usually isolated. Shrines provide solitary space for a nap, assuming you ignore the occasional squirrel or curious dog. Cons: minimal comfort. Hard stone floors and cold air remain constant companions. No food or water. You must rely entirely on what you carry or what you can beg. Occasional disapproval. Local villagers or caretakers may shoo you away if they find you messy, muddy, or too noisy. Immersive shrine experience. Crouching beneath the shrine's roof, you realize that safety comes at the cost of physical comfort. Your cloak becomes a makeshift mattress, your arms pillow, and every passing breeze reminds you that stone does not give warmth. Humor enters through tiny absurdities. A carved saint stares down at you with frozen judgment. You imagine its thoughts. You again, still barefoot. Insects investigate your cloak, occasionally hopping onto your sleeve, as if curious about your fashion choices. A passing crow caws mentally, and you whisper apologies to the saint, hoping your whispered confessions pass as piety rather than whining. Yet, the shrine has an undeniable magic, moral reassurance. Even the most desperate bandit hesitates near a cross, statue, or holy relic. The roadside shrine becomes a fortress of invisible authority, protecting you from dangers that your feet, cloak, and cleverness cannot. The traveler's perspective. Comparative reflection. By now, the peasant traveler has experienced churchyards, semi-protected spiritual safety, but hard and minimally comfortable. Monasteries, structured, warmish fed, but shared and ruled by strict schedules. Roadside shrines, isolated, morally protected, but tiny, cold, and lacking in basic comfort. Each option teaches lessons, adaptability. No single location is perfect. Survival depends on cleverness, observation, and humility. Sensory awareness. You must negotiate smells, sounds, and textures to claim even a few hours of sleep. Humor and imagination. Exaggerated fears. Judgmental saints and anthropomorphized animals keep your mind alive when your body wants to collapse. Roadside shrine humor and sensory immersion. The shrine is an intimate stage for minor absurdities. The saint statue is slightly off kilter, casting shadows that make it appear alive. You jump at a passing breeze, swearing it moved. A squirrel drops a nut near your head. You freeze, imagining it a tiny, vengeful spirit. Wind whistles through cracks in the wood, producing a low hum reminiscent of chanting, though less organized and more ominous than any monastery. Sleep, here, is fragile, punctuated by discomfort and curiosity, but it carries a subtle peace. No bandits, no judgmental monks, and no blisters rubbing against rough straw. You may wake chilled, stiff, and hungry, but morally, you are untouchably at least until sunrise. As dawn approaches, the roadside shrine fades behind you. The night has been long, full of moss, stone, wind, and occasional judgment. You have slept among saints and strangers, in fields, barns, and forest shadows. You have learned that survival is not merely about warmth, food, or shelter. It is about navigating a world that judges harshly, laughs quietly, and rarely accommodates the weary without cost. The semi-sanctified options, churchyards, monasteries, shrines offer structure, safety, and moral reassurance. Yet each reminds you that medieval life demanded humility, ingenuity, and just enough humor to survive. Sleep was a victory, brief and imperfect, a gift from stone, straw, or spirit. And tomorrow, the road continues, waiting with new challenges, new blisters, and perhaps another barn with judging cows. Imagine the night creeping in. Your feet are sore, your cloak still damp, and the open road has offered everything from mud to judgmental cows. The churchyards, monasteries, and roadside shrines have all been tried, but tonight, your options change. The scent of smoke drifts from distant windows, the occasional faint laughter floats on the wind, and the warm, golden glow of a tavern promises something the open air never could: warmth, human noise, and the price of a single ale. Welcome, dear traveler, to the chaotic, cozy, and slightly dangerous world of taverns, noble estates, and abandoned buildings. Taverns, warmth at a price. The tavern is a mixed blessing. Its door creaks as you enter, and the air is thick with smoke, ale, and the combined aroma of dozens of poorly washed humans. Pros: warmth. A roaring fire provides heat for your freezing feet. Shelter, walls, and roof protect from wind, rain, and wandering livestock. Company. Fellow travelers offer stories, camaraderie, and occasional advice. Potential food. Ale often comes with a slice of bread or a cheap stew. Cons: crowded and noisy. Snoring, arguments, singing, and spilled ale combine into a symphony of mild chaos. Cost: a mug of allure, a corner of straw requires coin, which you may not have. Minor danger: overly boisterous patrons may accidentally step on your feet or spill their drink. The tavern experience. You settle in a dark corner, nursing a tiny cup of ale. The smoke tickles your nose, and the warmth slowly spreads from your toes upward. Around you, people talk, laugh, argue, and occasionally fight over trivial insults or the last piece of bread. Humor enters naturally. You dodge a staggering man, imagining that his elbows are crossbows aimed at your head. A pig, belonging to a traveling merchant, snuffles near your feet, sniffing for dropped scraps, causing you to imagine a tactical battle of wits. Patrons spill drinks on you. Each mishap a reminder that comfort in a tavern comes at the cost of personal space, dignity, and cleanliness. The tavern is not glamorous, but compared to fields or judgmental gravestones, it feels like a palace. Here, warmth is bought cheaply, and sleep may be found if you tuck yourself under a bench or a corner of shared straw. Transition to noble estates after the tavern. If coin runs out, or the fire grows too crowded, the wandering peasant eyes the noble estate, that vast domain of wealth and power, filled with opportunities and dangers alike. Pros: stables and outbuildings. warmth from animals, protection from weather, and relative privacy. Potential charity. A generous steward or noble may grant permission to rest, or even share leftover food. Cons: risk of discovery. Guards, dogs, and vigilant stewards patrol constantly. Strict hierarchy. Peasants are expected to be invisible. A single misstep may earn a boot or a loud shout. Animals as companions. Cows, horses, and pigs are warm, but they are unpredictable and may kick, bite, or judge you silently. Humor and sensory details. On noble lands, imagine sneaking behind a stable, crouched low as a dog sniffs near your ankles. You pray the guard isn't on patrol, and you whisper apologies to a horse as it snorts and shifts, nearly rolling over your blanket. The night is a delicate dance of stealth, wit, and extreme humility. Every creak of the floorboards or flap of a barn door becomes a minor suspense story in your mind. Even the most careful peasant may find themselves briefly joined by a wandering goose, a startled pig, or a cow that seems to glare. The warmth of the animal is appreciated, but the risk of losing a toe or dignity is very real. So, the tavern has offered warmth at the price of ale, and the noble estate's stables have granted cautious protection behind judging animals. But, for the truly desperate or daring, there is one final option: abandoned buildings. Collapsing, rat-infested, and eerie, these structures promise shelter, with a generous dash of suspense. Tonight, we enter the world of forgotten walls, broken roofs, and shadowy corners, where danger and comfort coexist in a precarious balance. Abandoned buildings. Risk versus reward. Like taverns or noble estates, abandoned buildings offer no hospitality, no warmth from fires, and no friendly animals. They are raw, uncontrolled spaces, sometimes partially roofed, often infested with vermin, and always carrying an aura of suspense. Pros: complete shelter from wind and rain. Unlike open fields, walls block storms and drafts. Privacy rarely does anyone disturb the traveler here. Opportunities for scavenging. Forgotten scraps, loose straw, or even a dry corner may provide comfort. Cons: high risk of injury. Collapsing beams, broken floors, and sharp debris are constant threats. Animals and pests. Rats, bats, and spiders are frequent, unwelcome roommates. Psychological unease. Shadows, creaks, and echoes turn imagination into minor terror. Immersive abandoned building. Experience: you enter cautiously, feeling the uneven stones beneath your feet. Dust rises as you brush against broken walls. The air is thick with the scent of mildew and the faint tang of rodent territory. Every step creaks suspiciously, a warning that the floor may give way or that a rat is judging your presence. Humor emerges in small, exaggerated ways. You dodge a startled rat, imagining it a tiny, medieval assassin. A bat swoops past your head, and you whisper apologies as though it were a noble inspector of your personal hygiene. Shadows stretch and twist, and you convince yourself that the crooked beam is a crossbow waiting to fire at intruders. Despite the discomfort, there's a strange satisfaction. You are warm enough to survive, hidden from prying eyes, and alone with your thoughts and occasional squeaks. Sleep comes in brief, uneasy waves, punctuated by creaks and distant night sounds. Reflection. The peasant travelers, night by now. The night has offered every conceivable type of shelter. Taverns, noisy, warm, social but costly. Noble estates, stealthy warmth. Possible charity but risky and hierarchical. Abandoned buildings, privacy, free shelter but dangerous, creepy, and vermin-filled. Humor and storytelling tie them together. Sneaking behind pigs, avoiding guards, ducking crossbows that exist only in imagination, and imagining judgmental cows or bats, all combine to create an immersive experience. The takeaway is clear: survival for a medieval peasant required adaptability, stealth, creativity, and the ability to laugh at minor absurdities. As blisters throbbed and cloaks reeked of mud, every option had trade-offs, every choice carried risk, and every night was a miniature adventure in discomfort, resilience, and observation. So, you've snuck behind pigs, avoided angry guards, crouched among rats, and shared warmth with stubborn cows. You've experienced the tavern, the noble estate, and the abandoned building, each teaching a lesson in ingenuity, humility, and humor. Tomorrow, the journey continues, but tonight, you rest briefly, uneasily, and with the knowledge that medieval sleep was never simple, never safe, and always an adventure worth surviving. Pilgrimages and special cases, whispering ASMR-style intro. Imagine your feet blistered, your cloak soaked with rain and mud, and your stomach rumbling from days without proper food. You've survived the judgmental cows, the rats of abandoned buildings, and the chaos of taverns. And yet, tonight, there is a glimmer of hope, a tiny, almost magical promise of warmth, food, and indoor shelter. You've reached a pilgrim hostel, a hospitium, or a hospitious sanctuary for travelers, with one tiny requirement: a token, a badge, a simple piece of proof that you are walking in devotion. Welcome, weary traveler, to the rarest treat for a medieval peasant, slightly organized, semi-luxurious indoor shelter, the pilgrim badge, your golden ticket in the medieval world. Pilgrimages were more than spiritual journeys, they were survival opportunities for clever peasants. A pilgrim badge, often made of lead or tin, served as a pass. It told the hostile that you weren't just a wandering vagrant with a bad sense of direction. You were a holy traveler, a devoted pilgrim, and therefore worthy of minimal comfort. Pros of the badge: guaranteed admission to a designated guest hall, access to food, sometimes soup or bread, without requiring coin, warmth from indoor shelter, with dry floors and occasional straw bedding. Cons of misuse: badges were occasionally inspected by vigilant monks or stewards. Forgetting your token might leave you in the cold, or forced to sleep outside. Overstaying or misbehaving could result in immediate ejection or disapproving glares, strong enough to sting your pride. Humor tip: imagine a peasant whispering, "I swear, Father, this badge is real. I found it in a puddle," while a monk squints suspiciously. Inside the pilgrim hostel crossing, the threshold is like stepping into a different world. The air smells of dry straw, roasted herbs, and occasionally, overly ambitious garlic. The floor is cleaner than any barn or abandoned building, and the fire crackles steadily, offering warmth that feels almost luxurious compared to frostbitten nights in open fields. Food and drink: bread is usually coarse, sometimes a little stale, but edible. Soup is watery yet nourishing, a reminder that sustenance is as much about survival as flavor. Water or weak ale might be provided, enough to wash away grime and dull the edge of exhaustion. Sleeping arrangements: shared halls with straw, bedding or benches, dry corners, and occasional blankets for lucky pilgrims. Peaceful relative to the constant noises of taverns or barns. The humor is in the minor inconveniences. You might share a bench with a snoring, twitching pilgrim whose dreams involve angels or unpaid taxes. The smell of slightly damp straw mingles with body odor, enough to remind you that comfort always carries a price. Expected behavior: and like other shelters, pilgrim hostels required obedience, prayer, even a whispered mutter to the saint on duty counted. No theft. Take only what is offered or what fits within your humble badge. No inappropriate behavior: flirting with relics, arguing with monks, or trying to sneak extra bread could result in expulsion. Humor naturally emerges. Imagine a peasant trying to quietly pocket a hunk of bread, only for a monk to whisper, "The Virgin sees all, and she does not approve of theft in hallways." The rare luxury of pilgrim hosts for a medieval peasant. A pilgrim hostel was a glimpse of indoor life, a small taste of warmth, a hot meal, and safety from animals and weather. It's not luxury by modern standards, but in the brutal hierarchy of sleeping options: mud, barns, fields, forests, taverns, and abandoned buildings, it ranks near the top. Advantages over other options: consistent shelter, less worry about wildlife, access to food and drink without negotiation or coin, minimal risk of being attacked or discovered by angry locals. Humor and immersive cues: whispering pilgrims, snoring louder than livestock, monks walking silently with candlelight, creating minor suspense, the occasional stray chicken pecking at shoes, reminding the peasant that even in semi-luxury, medieval life is full of surprises. Reflection and takeaways: the pilgrim hostel represents a rare intersection of faith, cleverness, and survival. A peasant who plans ahead, carries a badge, and behaves properly could experience warmth, shelter, and food. A mini vacation in the context of medieval misery. It teaches us that in history, even minor cleverness and adherence to social rules could yield a taste of comfort as night deepens. Our traveling peasant curls into straw bedding, whispers a prayer, and allows themselves a moment of relief. They are safe, fed, and sheltered. The journey has been long, exhausting, and full of absurdities, but for tonight, at least, survival feels like victory. Survival strategy and improvisation. The sun has set, your feet are blistered, and the barns, forests, and pilgrim hostiles have all refused permanent residence. You've dodged judgmental cows, rats, and disapproving monks. Now, it's time to face the ultimate challenge: survival without formal shelter, without coins, and with nothing but your wits. Tonight, we follow the peasant who must beg, improvise, and adapt to extreme conditions, because in medieval life, comfort was a rare visitor, and creativity was a survival skill. Begging at homes, a roulette of generosity when the streets inns and holy sites deny entry. Peasants turn to private homes. Each knock on a door is a gamble, a medieval roulette wheel of human kindness. Pros: shelter from wind and rain, warmth from fireplaces or hearths, occasionally, food or drink provided by sympathetic villagers. Cons: risks: some households refuse outright, sending you away to the cold night. Unfriendly dogs or suspicious neighbors might chase or intimidate. Some villagers may charge a fee, turning survival into negotiation. Humor cues: imagine a peasant crouching under a window, pretending to admire flowers while waiting for the door to open. Dogs bark ferociously, forcing a dramatic leap over fences. Cloak trailing like a medieval superhero. Villagers whisper about your muddy presence as if you were an invading army of one. Each home offers a chance at warmth, yet the peasant must always move quickly, lest suspicion or impatience turn refuge into exile. Creative sleeping solutions: when begging fails or isn't enough, the peasant must improvise. Markets, corners of houses, and proximity to animals become temporary shelters. Market stalls, wooden frames and cloth covers provide partial protection from rain. Quiet nights may allow brief sleep before vendors return. Hilarious imagery: a peasant, curling up under a counter, trying not to inhale the scent of last week's fish. Corners of houses or barns, huddling near walls, blocks, wind, and nooks, can hide from inquisitive villagers. The risk of being discovered adds suspense. Humor arises from the awkward contortions needed to fit in tight spaces, or from accidentally curling against a sleepy goat. Near animals, heat from cows, pigs, or even chickens can be surprisingly comforting. Animals judge silently, and occasionally wake the peasant with a nudge or grunt. Comedic cue: curling against a warm pig, only to be nudged mid-dream into mud or straw. The peasant's nightly strategy blends pragmatism with improvisation. Warmth, concealment, and minimal disturbance become the rules of engagement. Ingenuity and humor: the ingenuity of the medieval traveler is astounding. Adaptive layering: cloaks, rags, and straw pads used creatively to stay warm. Spatial tactics: choosing corners, niches, or shadows to avoid detection. Psychological tricks: pretending to be praying, inspecting imaginary relics, or whispering apologies to animals for occupying their space. Humor naturally weaves in, sneaking past villagers like a stealthy, mud-covered ninja, negotiating with goats as if they were customs officials, whispering motivational, self-pep talks to endure the cold. These small acts of creativity reflect a combination of survival instinct and human resilience, transforming extreme discomfort into a game of skill, wit, and humor. Reflection: the peasant's night. By now, the night has demonstrated that medieval peasants survived through ingenuity, patience, and minor luck. Each improvised sleeping spot, from market stalls to huddling near animals, represents a calculated risk, balanced with a flicker of hope. Key takeaway: survival depended not only on strength, but on clever observation, humor, and adaptability. Humor and immersive cues: whispered dialogue with animals, imaginary scolding from landlords, and exaggerated creaks of floors or fences create a fully immersive ASMR experience. The peasant adapts continuously, moving when necessary, negotiating for warmth, using straw and cloaks creatively, and always planning the next potential shelter. Each decision carries consequences, blending tension, comedy, and resourcefulness. Closing hook for this section: so, tonight, our peasant has survived barns, forests, taverns, pilgrim hostiles, and noble lands, all while improvising in the shadows of medieval life. They have begged at doors, slept under counters, and huddled next to animals, They've learned that survival is equal parts courage, wit, and humor. And as the first light of dawn creeps across the horizon, our weary traveler rises. Feet sore, cloak damp, but spirit intact, ready to continue the next day's journey through a world that demands ingenuity at every step. As the journey of our weary medieval traveler comes to a close, let us pause for a moment and look back. From barns filled with judgmental cows and scratchy straw, to open fields that left every nerve alert to thistles, dung, and wind, each night brought its own trial. Forests whispered secrets of lurking wolves and hidden bandits, while offered spiritual protection, if not warmth. Pilgrim hostels gave fleeting comfort, monasteries provided cold floors and shared soup, and roadside shrines offered shelter for the clever and lucky. Taverns and noble estates occasionally welcomed the desperate, and abandoned buildings tested courage, endurance, and bladder control. Throughout it all, our peasant adapted, improvised, and endured. They begged at doors, curled up near animals, and learned that survival in medieval life required equal parts cunning, humility, and humor. Each night was a delicate dance, avoiding danger, finding warmth, and hoping that neither livestock nor locals noticed their presence. It was exhausting, uncomfortable, and absurd, but somehow it was life. And in that absurdity, there was a strange resilience, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of relentless challenges. Soft background, sounds of wind and distant animals, creating a calming atmosphere. Imagine the smell of damp straw, the scratch of rough cloaks against skin, the creak of wooden beams overhead, the gentle snore of a nearby cow. This was the lullaby of the medieval traveler. Sleep was never guaranteed, comfort was fleeting, but the lessons were enduring. Adapt, endure, and when all else fails, find humor in the absurdity of it all. Every misplaced step, every startled goat, every midnight knock or whispered prayer, shaped a night in the life of a peasant, a life that modern beds and heating can barely begin to rival in challenge and unpredictability. So next time you complain about your mattress, remember, somewhere, a medieval peasant just hoped their barn owl wouldn't peck their nose off. And yet, they survived, adapted, and kept moving forward. Their story reminds us that even in discomfort, resilience and a little humor can turn survival into adventure.